I'm going to pull guard. Now you've been doing a single leg X setup from this, like a zoom, where you go in, and as you sit down, he's over you, take him over you, and you get the leg here, which you can start work. We can do that drill if you want. But what I want you to take note of is that this single leg X position is alright, but it's quite easy to just defend and start. I want to get into 50-50, which is a more locked in position. Better for leg locks. Okay, and better for all sorts of things. So what we're going to do is the same thing again. And I'm stepping in, and as I sit my bum to the ground, I just lift the leg up to just direct it. Doesn't matter if he goes miles away or if he's there, but this should be able to control. We're going to raise everything, and we're going to do sweep. The sweep is assisted by this. You don't have to grab this, but this definitely helps. My hips go up, he falls down. As he falls down, that's your opportunity to change legs. Because his legs are light when he's on his back on the ground. As soon as he starts sitting down, the legs are heavy, and it's very hard to revert into 50-50. Don't do any leg locks or anything here. We are simply doing the position. We're getting into 50-50. Then I'll talk more about my interpretation of 50-50. So the whole thing again. Okay, 1, 2, 3, let's go. We start these techniques in 50-50. Just to reiterate, my leg goes over his thigh goes over mine. There are various versions of 50-50. For example, he could be standing. That's still 50-50, it's just that he's standing and on the ground. Equally, I could be standing. Yeah, right? So, just bear in mind. This is not a lesson on how to deal with standing. We're just going to deal with white belt friendly, IBJJ's legal, straight ankle lock from 50-50. Also, we're assuming that this leg is not entwined with the other. It's not a problem if it is, but I'm not going to cover this. This will have to be for another lesson just because there's too much information. We're going to go for a basic finish from here. Now the basic finish. Now, when you're in neutral, my hips are facing his hips are facing his hips are facing mine. He has an equal chance of finishing me off as I am of him. And then it becomes a straight shooter. We want to avoid this. As I loop around, he loops around. Okay, so loop around. And then we're both in this position. And this is a matter of who can hold out for the longest. Right, let's go for it. Okay, I'm going to go for this. Right. So, we want to avoid that scenario. We're going to spin round. First of all, protect yourself. Whenever I get into 50-50, I do two things. I can either cross over, and therefore as Chris tries to loop around, he has to deal with this. It's just waste time. It's buying me time. But this also restricts my movement. Another thing I do is I just turn to the outside. This takes his bum cheek off the ground and puts my bum cheek firmly on here. I also have a nice platform with which to base myself. Handily, this also exposes his foot up to the ceiling. In Tuesday class, we looked at the heel hook. Look how exposed and nice that heel is. I'm not doing heel hooks today, okay? Let's not get in trouble with Sandy. Okay, I'm going to loop around. Oh, look what I did there. I had to create space. Go underneath and close the space. If you try and do it from here, first, it's a bit obvious. Secondly, I'm in the way. Here. Everything else is the same in terms of how I teach the straight ankle lock. I like to hold quite high up. Rather than 90 degrees, I'm making the angle more acute. Smaller angle. That's the ideal. Now, how you grip is up to you. I still like the guillotine grip. I go up here, and I finish it off like this. But I realise some people don't like that grip, it doesn't work for them. So another alternative is you can just grab your gi. Same thing again. Make sure his leg is bent. And we're chest first, then hips. We're closing all the gaps. Another thing you want to bear in mind is where your feet are. Now at the moment, Chris is being very nice, he's staying where he is. But it's quite easy for him to deny me this, but just moving around. And it's like, if my legs are out there, even though I'm turning the right way, this becomes harder. I need to isolate his hips and immobilize them. And the easiest way to do this especially from the outward facing direction, is to put your feet on his hip. Now as Chris moves around, I can follow him. I'm literally tracking him, and he's making it worse for himself. Okay? That's technique number one. I'm going to show you 2 techniques, just because I can't be able to film 4 techniques. So, neutral, not good. Facing outwards, good. Can't get it in, hip out and in again, loop in. High as you can, grabbing the gi really helps. But, because I want to puff my chest and use my hips, a very obvious defense is that he grabs my gi or anything he can to prevent that, you see? Okay, so what I'm going to do now is keep grabbing, because I can't stretch back. I'm going to open my legs out, and rather than stretch, I'm going to just turn on the spot. There's 2 versions. You could even go straight to this one. You don't need to be grabbed to do this one. Let's do it all again. 50-50 neutral, my feet dangling in the air, not good. All these techniques rely on my feet planted on the ground, knees twisting out to the side, thus exposing his heel. I'm on one hip on the ground, he has one hip on the ground, he has one hip facing up here. I can't find the straight ankle, I have to out, in, and it's high. Grab the gi if you need to. Technique number 1, we're simply feet on the hips. Technique number 2, he grabs. So even with feet on the hips, it's a bit more of a power battle. Hand free, legs out wide, hurdle stretch. So without somebody, thank you Chris, without somebody there, it's like that. We call this a hurdle stretch. Okay, this was invented by Rodrigo Cavaca. Some people call it the Cavaca footlock. Google it, it's really cool. I learned this ages ago, and we call it the hurdlers, because you're like, do hurdlers even do this? Anyway, it's whatever, pigeon pose, whatever, you know what I mean. Is that enough information? Do you think to work on, yeah? Okay, 1, 2, 3, let's go. So far I've gone for the basic straight ankle lock. Here, hip out, in again. Notice the similarity with the drills that I did in fundamentals. This hip out, this in, trying to close the space, but now there's no space. Now, sometimes, no matter how good you are at the shrimping and hipping it, and you're just a little bit too high up. Spin around, so. Let's see this. Sometimes you can't get this, and then you just get what you can, but it's a little bit too high. Now I know, just from experience, trying to finish from here is hard work, because his leg is thicker up here. If you follow Dean Lister, he actually has what he calls a calf crush, but it's a straight ankle lock from here. I don't know how he does it, because I've never made it work, but it's the same thing. It's the same as a straight ankle lock, but you do it on the calf muscle, and you're supposed to get a tap. I don't know, I think Cameron's being nice to me. I've never made it work in sparring. I want to go from, if I want the perfect sweet spot, I want to go from here. You see my arm is looped around this calf, to here. And yet, in this very encapsulated position with my feet on his hips, it's very hard to shrimp out and do that, and it just doesn't feel right. It's like, you don't even feel the threat, do you? Not from here. Because here was tight, and as his leg gets thinner, I'm kind of getting looser, and then I have to readjust. It's a pain. So here's a quick tip. Since we can shrimp in and out, we might as well change leg orientation. Here. To this. This is a Mikey Musumeci favorite. It's called outside butterfly Ashi. Don't want to confuse yourself. Okay? But this allows me to quite nicely extend, reduce my loop back here, and then we close the knees and everything's the same. Chest, hips. Yeah. So, we've gone from the original 50-50 neutral, pointing the knees outwards. I tried to get the loop, but it's too high up. It's a bit too much. You've got very muscly legs, okay? I out, in, high, turn, and then we got that. Now, if this fails, because you put yourself in the weird position, we can do the cross arm one, which is really annoying because it's quite powerful. Sorry. I just want to show you that so you have an understanding of that you're not just relegated just doing this one. Actually much more subtlety in this simple finish called the straight ankle lock, which is they introduced at white belt, but even black belts use it to finish matches because there's so much nuance and variation to it. I'll show you the 2 techniques again, and then I'll leave you to practice whichever ones you want to do. So, we're neutral, pointing legs out. I've gone for my loop, but it's a bit too high up. I haven't got that sweet spot, which is down here. I shrink backwards This goes underneath his leg here, and this goes on his hip. I missed that detail out. We still need to be on his hip. This allows me to bring the arm up high, lower down on his leg, and I can finish here like this. Just since we're practicing, you might have transition from here. Other leg goes here. You're doing a figure 4 rear naked choke style grip. And then the movement pattern is upwards, because it's quite hard to do it sideways. It's upwards. Okay, you felt that, didn't you? Yeah. You can see this, so do you want me to show it to you again?
I should be okay.
I'll have to show you then, yeah?
Okay.
Maybe I'll put it. So if you sit there, you can see that. There's always a point and a reason to use for your shot selection, okay? If Chris didn't know how to defend himself, I'm quite happy to go with the very basic one, okay? But if he grabs my arm and defends, then I have to try something else, then we try this one, okay? The rotating one, which is actually a toe hold, which I'll explain to someone. If I've got too much of a grip here, it's easier for him to defend, and I'm not going to finish it. So I'm going to change my leg position. The outside leg tucks in underneath, the inside leg goes on his hip, like that. You automatically find yourself sliding down the leg anyway, and then we can finish with a bit more oomph. Okay, since you're here anyway, we're going to take the outside arm, put this here, change it to a rear naked choke, and now the movement is like that. This one is a nice one. Ben and I were practicing this earlier, because say he grabs my arm and really pulls hard until I can't loop. Now this is going to do the loop here. Keep grabbing my arm, pull my sleeve. Okay, I can still get the finish, because now this is the fulcrum, not this. I hope I explained myself all right there. It gets super technical. Honestly, that's just the beginning. I've got like a dozen other straight ankle locks from different